What's up, friends? Welcome to Healing Within with Jess.
And Liz, this podcast is all about mindset, relationships, business, and spirituality.
If this episode hits you in your soul, send this to someone you care about.
They will thank you. Believe us.
Seriously, believe us. If you enjoy this podcast, send us a subscribe, a follow, and a 5-star review and help us reach other beautiful souls just like you.
And with that, let's jump into Healing Within.
Woo! We're in it, baby. And today we are talking about shedding old versions of ourselves. And me and Liz popped on to say, what are we going to talk about today? What's live for us? And I'm like, Liz, dude, I am shedding right now. There are so many parts of me that just need to be released. And I think we need to talk about this with all of you.
Hell yeah, definitely. Very live for me too. So let's get it.
So I have been experiencing so many emotions the last few weeks, and specifically the last week. Like every single day I'm crying. Things are coming out of me. I am like, what the hell is this? And I was talking to a friend the other day and I said, I feel like I'm holding on to all of these past versions of myself. I'm holding on to the person I am right now because I'm terrified of what is next, that I'm taking these huge jumps, these huge leaps into this new version. And what does that mean? Who do I have to leave behind? And is it me that I have to leave behind? Yes. So Liz, what are you experiencing when it comes to shedding too?
Yeah, I think about like a year ago, I was deep in this shit. And I think that there's really 4 stages of shedding into a new identity that you can probably go through these 4 stages multiple times. But I think there's awareness, purge, grief, and discovery. And we can really dive into a couple of those today. But I was deep in my grief stage last year, where again, I was really thinking to myself, do I have to leave behind this girl that got me through so much shit? Like, this is me. And for so long, I would say, like, this is me, take it or leave it, right? Like, I got through some tough times and it almost like tore me apart to think that I had to leave her behind. And it's scary as hell walking into a future where it's just a big question mark. And it's a blank slate. And you're like, okay, how do I show up in this moment? And so I think right now I'm in the discovery stage where I'm really just like starting to surrender and feel what my higher self looks like and feels like and shows up. I try to get into stages where, like, if my shadows come up, I'm very aware of them. And I kind of just sit down at the table and I'm like, okay, let's do it. Let's talk about it. But yeah, I mean, last year, deep in the grief stage.
And that's exactly where I'm at right now. It's this like full grief of fuck. Like I really truly have to say goodbye. And that is so scary. And I almost have this like visualization of like all of these older versions of myself, like even all the way back to like 16, 18, 20, like let's go by twos. And now I'm 28. Maybe this is like the sign, like I'm 28. I'm in my era. What do they call it when you're in your 28? They say it's like your, if you guys know what it is, please message us and say it's this. But when you go to like 28, it's like this new era that is like bridging the gap from like the younger versions of your 20s and you stepping into this new version of your upper 20s. And I feel like the grief stage is so strong here because I have had such incredible journeys through the last few years of my 20s. And that's when my spiritual awakening happened. And I kept growing and I kept going and I started a business. I quit my 9-to-5. I invited beautiful people into my life. And now it's like, okay, well, if I have to grieve all of those versions, like have to like go back and say, all right, 26-year-old Jess, like, thank you. 24, thank you. 22, thank you. I have to say that to 28 almost right now. And even though I'm not even through 28, I feel like I have to say thank you to her so I can totally put her to rest with gratitude. And I can step into that discovery stage. And Liz, when you talk about awareness and purge and grief and discovery, and you can have this multiple times, do you feel that you being in the discovery phase right now, do you feel that when you continue on your journey and your growth, that you go back to awareness and then purge and then grief, and that's when the cycle happens all over again?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I went through the whole cycle again earlier this late last year, earlier this year. I left my hometown again in January of this year. And I feel like I'm starting a whole new chapter right now. I have a new, relationship. I have a new apartment. I'm in a new city. My business is taking off. So now I'm starting to be in my self-discovery stage. But before that, I went back to my hometown, started hanging out with the old group of people because that's all I knew. And I started going into really bad old habits. And I then again hit the purge stage where I was like, I have to get rid of these people. And like, I think that it's really important to understand that you have responsibility for your own actions, but we adapt to our environments. And so, and as humans. And so when you put yourself in a situation where all they're doing is drugs, alcohol, stealing, lying, cheating, you become that because you do that in order to survive, because one of our primal fears is to be shunned from our environment because now we're vulnerable. And so we start to adapt. We start to use the language that they use. We start to have the same thoughts that they have, right? The same habits that they have. So I ended up finding myself getting back into that stage, which is funny. 4 years before that, I purged the same people. Man, same exact people. And I have love for them. I always will. But at the end of the day, I had to purge again, go through grief again, because the old Liz came back, and that's my girl. Like, that's my homie, the old Liz. But at the end of the day, she's just not, I don't want to say she's not welcome anymore, but she's not useful anymore. Like, she's very maladaptive, I would say.
Yeah. And it's interesting that it's literally like you repeated a lesson, like the same type of lesson of the purge with the same group of people. And I hear that so fully. And I feel like that's where a lot of us, like, we hold on to the purge. Like, we don't want to accept it. And that's why I feel like with this shedding process and these 4 stages that we're really focusing on here is when the awareness happens, that can be so terrifying that we immediately shut ourselves down and we're like, I don't want to see what's next. And then when you finally get to what's next and there's the purging, it's that surrendering and that acceptance that you have to say bye to certain people.
Yep. And the purge stage is lonely. That's the stage that you start to really understand that growth is lonely as hell.
Yep. And then that's, again, I feel like that sparks this like grief stage, because you're grieving not only yourself of the version of you that you're saying bye to, but all of the past people that like cultivated this person. And like, you have good memories, and that's where our mind wants to go. Like, think about any breakups that you've ever experienced. A lot of times we stay because we're like all of the good things they've ever did. But it's like, but what about the actual fact of who they are and how your relationship is? And when we actually look at that for what it is, we create awareness around that, and we are fully able to purge that. The grief process is a catalyst to that discovery. Like, it has to happen. And I think you posted about this on Instagram the other day about, no, I'm losing it, but it was more of like, you have to like really say goodbye to these people to step into discovery.
You have to say goodbye, not only to the people in your environment, but you have to say goodbye to your old self. It has to happen. And if you are not, and I think that this is really important too, and this is something that I was really like thinking about early this morning is I feel like a lot of people struggle in their self journey and their transformation because they look for support at the wrong stage. So let's say you're at stage 1, awareness, but all of the advice that you're following and all of the modalities that you're trying to implement are meant for stage 3. Now you start demonizing yourself because nothing's working. You feel broken. You feel like maybe it's just not, this just isn't for you, right? Nothing is helping you get through this. And I think becoming aware of which stage you're at is so important. I mean, everything comes in stages. Even boundaries. I was talking to my clients about boundaries. It's like setting boundaries with these people is stages to that, right? Awareness that you need the boundaries, actually figuring out what your boundaries are. And you figure that out by people crossing them. You figure out in the moment. You're like, oh shit, that's a boundary. Okay, got it. Right. And then the stage of setting them, right? And then the stage of setting them with yourself. I mean, there's stages to everything. And so I think it's really important to keep in mind, like, if you're in the awareness stage, get support for that. Don't try to jump straight into support for self-discovery because you got some steps to go through before you jump into that.
That hit, Liz, because that hit because I've been there. I've been like, who can I ask for help from? Who's going to help me in the discovery phase? And I go in with this clear thought of like, I'm becoming someone, I'm discovering this. But then sometimes it's the mentor being like, let's pull you back a little bit because there's a lot of shit that you have to figure out before you get to the discovery. And our ego loves to scream at us and say, well, like either they're holding you back or this is happening or this is happening. And then we start to listen to our ego. There's so many of my clients who I love how aware they are, where they're like, my ego is talking right now. And I was like, okay, well, when you meditate on it and you take the ego out and you talk to your unconscious mind, just like the higher self of you, what comes through? And when they can finally displace themselves from the ego and their higher self and see like, okay, the ego's trying to keep you safe. Why is the ego trying to keep you safe? Like, what are the past conditionings and programmings and patterns that want to keep you the same? And what does a higher self want for you? And when you actually listen to higher self, and then you can look at the ego and be like, oh, like I have to purge and grieve you now to step into this higher self. And you mentioned something about how like you should find help or do the work on the certain stages that you're in. How do you discover what stage you're in?
Cool. That one's a big one. I kind of explained a little bit of what each stage looks like. So awareness is like your spiritual awakening, you thinking something needs to change, big life shift. You might have some illness or disease going on right here, what people like to call quarter life crisis, midlife crisis, right? Like this is kind of like you take a step back and you notice like a bomb has been dropped and you're like, whoa, I got a lot of smoke going on. Like what's happening? Something has to change. That's your awareness. Like that's you being like, yeah, I'm ready to look into this. A lot of people aren't there. And so they try to jump into self-discovery because that's what they see circulating all over the internet. And they're like, they're not even at their oh shit moment. You have to be sick of your own shit to change. Right. So you can't bring an alcoholic to AA if they're not willing to actually change. So if you're not at your oh shit moment, you can't dive into self-discovery. It's not going to work. So, wait till you're at your oh shit moment. It'll come. It'll come.
Multiple times.
It'll come. Purging is really just like when you start looking at your friends and you're like, whoa, I don't align with what you're saying anymore. I don't want to go out to the bar anymore. This isn't serving me. Like this just feels weird, right? Like you start to get really, I like to explain this as like you start to have a short fuse with people in your life, right? You start to feel disrespected or you're like, I can't talk to you anymore. Like the conversations that we're having is just not driving anymore. That's more so like purge stage. You're like starting to see the universe at this stage will also start showing you what doesn't align. Universe starts taking shit from you. Relationships start to fall apart, right? Things just aren't working out anymore. Grief is like that stage where you almost feel depressed. Grief is like you're looking at your life, nothing brings you joy anymore. You're like big question mark, like, who am I? What is this? What do I do? Right? You're questioning everything. That's grief stage. And then discovery is like when you finally start to be able to fall into surrender and trust and, understanding that like the universe has your back and the smoke starts to clear and you start to become creative and ambitious and you start to actually believe that you are this person that you're becoming. So that's a little insight.
Yeah, that's so good. And like literally you talking through all of this, like I saw the past few years of my life just like flash before my eyes. And it's so fascinating because everything that you just described, all of that was me last year, like end of last year, the last 6 months. And then the beginning of this year, I was like, fuck yeah, I'm discovering like creative, like so many things are coming my way, like so much joy, so much happiness. Like that's the time where I was like, wow, I really can meditate for 30 to 60 minutes a day. I can really do all of my practices and still show up online with my clients, like all of these things with my friends, like so many things. And something that my life coach loves to share with me, and a new friend of mine who's into astrology has shared with me yesterday, like, you are a lot of Scorpio. Holy shit. Like, and Scorpios are just, they are the passion, the fire, the intensity, and they shed. And that's why I see like awareness, purge, grief, discovery, shedding. I feel like a snake constantly. And I think that any like Scorpios out there, any other people who like really feel that you are constantly finding yourself going through these stages at such a quick rate, like, first off, congratulations. Like, for you to constantly be pushing yourself to the next level. I mean, I know it's discomfort. There's a lot of uncomfortable feelings with it. Literally, I started doing ecstatic dance, which like is my new hobby, and it brought me out of my comfort zones, and it's still uncomfortable. But that for the last 3 months has been this awareness. And then I'm in this purge stage right now where I'm like, do I want to be with this community in ecstatic dance, or do I want to find a different community that ecstatic dance is? Like, I want to kind of go out there, and it's grieving saying bye to that community to open up a new door. And I think those are those things, like all these things I've been reflecting on is that like next step to this like full on discovery. Like, I truly feel it as, whether it's like my heart space or my solar plexus, like when the grief finally settles and I make peace with it, it's going to be like this, like,
yep.
Holy shit. Like, I am fiery. I am free. Like, everything's out there. It's like a beam of light for anyone who can really visualize things, a beam of light coming from these spaces. And it's like, it's so exciting. And like, I'm moving through my fear right now, just in this episode, and moving to excitement, because fear holds us back, because the ego and the fear, they're like hand in hand, they're hanging out. But when you start to say like, holy shit, like I've made so much changes, I'm doing the work to create a better life for myself, that's when your higher self comes in and you're like, all right, this is exciting. Like, we can do this.
Yeah. I think it's cool that you used a snake as an example. And when you said that, a couple things came into my mind, like 3 things, right? We normalize snakes shedding their skin. When they start to shed, we're like, she's shedding. Like, leave her alone, give her some space. She's shedding. Don't peel it off. We get told not to peel it off, right? Let her go through her process. Let her shed at her own time, right? And then we also know that like, if you start to peel it off, it hurts them, right? And so we know that it's not a comfortable state to be in, but it's something that they know is coming. They're expecting it, and they let it happen at its own pace. I think that is so important. And I think that we forget that we are animals.
Mammals, baby.
We're mammals. We forget that, because society has tried to evolve us into these like crazy, I mean, look, our brain has evolved, let alone we have such deep understanding of things. We can apply logic to stuff. We can process very complex emotions. believe me, humans are just an incredible evolution, but at the end of the day, we're still human, we're still animals, and we still go through the same shedding, same adaptations, same evolution as every other animal. It's just we create meaning behind it rather than just letting it be what it is.
This like whole snake reference, I'm envision like someone just like literally putting a snake on the screen and like letting it just like a time lapse of it slowly shedding through its skin. And it comes back to, I feel like a common theme that we have here is surrendering. And you and I did a live about surrendering and letting go, like that, like letting go of control. And it comes back to surrendering and letting go of control, because we want to control every ounce of our life. Society has told us that we can and that we should. So we try to hold on with a death grip of these versions of ourselves, or like jobs that don't serve us, relationships that don't serve us, whatever it may be, whatever the purge, grief, discovery process is after awareness. And when can we start to like feel this like surrendering? Like when I think of surrender, I truly feel like my shoulders relax.
Yep.
And I feel at peace. But how can someone who is really struggling with this right now, with struggling with surrendering, what can they do? Like, what's that first step for them to just kind of like let their shoulders down a little bit?
Yeah. I think I would ask myself the question of, one, what are you surrendering to? Right? Like, what is really just like putting you through it? Like, what are you holding on to? What control are you holding on to? So awareness of what you're surrendering to, but also asking yourself, like, what is the worst that can happen? And I know that's like such a general question, but I feel like a lot of the times we start to try to understand like who we want to be, what we want to do. The best way to do that is to understand what we don't want and who we don't want to be, right? So what are you trying to avoid? What are you trying to not experience by not surrendering? That makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And this actually makes me think about, I've been asking myself this question a lot. And it's the question of like, what are you scared of? Like, what fear is behind this that's not allowing you to surrender? Because once you call out that fear and you truly like put it on a piece of paper, you write it on a whiteboard or your window or whatever, you just say it out loud, you no longer are hiding behind this fear. The fear is no longer there because you see it for what it is. And that's why like I'm so big on, when you are feeling this, go to your journal and just write about it. Like let it out, because Jesus, my throat chakra is like, yeah, dude, we're like really, we are releasing, dude. Surrender to it. It's always behind fear. I feel like I have found that true over and over again. Like I'm planning a trip to Costa Rica and I found myself in so much fear. And like I'm reaching next levels in my business and I'm met with so much fear, because these fears are versions of us that have not experienced it yet. So it's easy for us to be fearful because it's the unknown, and the unknown scares the shit out of all of us.
All the time. Oh my God. I remember when I was going on my road trip throughout Arizona into California, I was by myself. Got a one-way ticket, had no plans, nowhere to stay. I was like, I'm winging it, baby. And it was literally because I was going through the purge stage and I was like, I need something different. Like I am feeling so constricted in my life, in my environment, in everything. I was like, I need to just like crack it open. And it did just that. And I remember I was walking down the stairs to go pack, and my brother asked me the question, aren't you scared? And I said, yep, that's why I'm doing it. You got to do it. Like I remember the first hike I went on was the Grand Canyon. If you've never been on a hike, I recommend don't go to the Grand Canyon. Start smaller. I was on the edge of the Grand Canyon, full-blown panic attack. There was ice all over. My boyfriend at the time already fell. And I was literally thinking to myself, I'm going to die. Like, my mind was going to the absolute worst scenario. And in that moment, I literally looked at my fear and said, I can either turn around and listen to you, or I can keep going and prove you wrong. And in that moment, it was scary because I realized I had a fear of heights.
Mm.
And sometimes, like I was talking about boundaries, you don't realize you have them until they're crossed or until they show up in the moment. And you're like, oh, hello. Right. And I kept going, and I got to the lookout, and I just bawled my eyes out because I was like, no one really understood what I was going through in that moment because they were all experienced hikers. And that was okay because it was for me.
Mhm.
But I looked at the lookout and I was like, holy shit, I just conquered not only a panic attack. I did not only keep moving in a panic attack, but I just conquered one of the biggest fears that came out of nowhere
Mm.
that could have absolutely crippled me. And in that very moment, I learned I can literally look at anything that scares me in my life and just do it.
Mm.
And I think that that's like, look, healing is very vulnerable and scary. And I like to give a lot of my clients and whoever I talk to space to feel that.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, it creates mental resiliency
Mhm.
and you become a strong ass bitch through it.
Mhm.
Right. And so sometimes the only answer is, yeah, you're scared, but do it anyway.
Yes. And like going back to the common phrase of you grow the most when you are uncomfortable. Like discomfort, uncomfortable is fear and is being scared shitless.
Mm-hmm.
But saying, I still am going to do this. Like I'm gonna do it anyways, because that is going to slingshot me into who I want to become. Like if we constantly just did things that were a part of a routine, that were in our safety zone, like that shit gets boring. And if you're to the point where you're literally looking around and you're like, I'm bored, like that's me right now. I'm like, I'm bored. I want to do something. So I get a tattoo and I'm like, all right, let's plan a trip to Costa Rica by myself. Never been. Like I'm someone who I've always been the person who I've seen what makes me uncomfortable and I'll do it anyways. But I used to always not be that way. But when I started doing that, I started to notice the butterflies, the sweat, like the anxiety of like, holy shit, like what am I doing? But then when you actually do it, it's almost addictive. Like getting a tattoo, it's fucking addictive. So that is exactly what it is when exactly. Like doing things that scare you, doing things that are going to grow you, that shit, like get addicted to that shit. Because if you are trying to grow and you are ready for that next level, and maybe you're already in the awareness, maybe you're already in the purge or the grief, or maybe you're like so close to discovery or you just stepped in, like keep going, do the scary shit, because that version of you has already existed and they are literally waiting for you at that finish line to cheer you on, to hold you, to hug you, and then walk you towards the next finish line, because there are multiple finish lines, just like every like marathon people run or any competition you do. Like doing something that pushes you to like this celebration, this like aha moment, like the fog moving when you're in discovery phase. That is when you're finally this beautiful, sexy fucking snake.
Mm-hmm.
You shed, you took the process, and you're like, fuck, it feels good. Like I'm a slithery snake.
Yes. So many people ask me, especially recently, they're like, how do you just show up with like boundaries and like you say what it is and you stand your ground and you just don't play? And I always say it's because I have puffed my chest out, wiped my tears, and walked through the fucking fire.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can cry at the end. Right. But sometimes I feel like healing becomes this like so soft thing, right? Like whenever we talk about healing, everyone's like, oh, accept, like, surrender, accept, like, beautiful meditation. No, it is the fire. Okay. And if you are not willing to wipe those damn tears and walk through it, you're not going to get through it. And that's
Mhm.
just me being straight up. And
Mhm.
when you said like tattoos, I was just talking to my boyfriend about it. I have my whole hand done now. I'm getting the rest of my arm done. And let me tell you something. They're not, whoever says they tickle are lying to you. And everyone has different pain tolerance, right? But I was telling my boyfriend, I was like, tattoos are just actually a really powerful thing because you sit through pain for hours
Mm.
and you just breathe and you literally just tell yourself, I'm good. I'm fine. Like, we got this, breathe. I mean, and it's powerful to be
Mhm.
able to go through such a tough situation, pain wise, and be like, I'm okay.
Mm. So what you're saying is for people to go through a spiritual journey and go through the four stages, just go get a fucking tattoo and you get it.
Yep.
We want all of us tatted up. Like I said, I'm ready for when the sleeve is coming through.
Yeah.
So I love that you constantly like put yourself through not just like the pain of what a tattoo is, but like you throw yourself into the fire. And I really think it's important for us to recognize and call out what you shared about how people say like they give this like healing is this like soft and gentle, and sometimes there are
Sometimes.
like little spurts of that where
Yeah.
like you find the joy and you're just like looking at this green plant with the sun shining in, and you're
Yeah.
like, wow, that is so gorgeous. Oh, it feels so good. I can feel it in my body. I can feel the petals just like breathing with me. I'm not on mushrooms, I promise. But
Yet.
yet, yeah, see you tomorrow. And I feel like that is like you get to have this super high, soft, gentle experience after you put yourself through
Mhm.
the flames.
Yep.
And kudos to everyone who has started this journey. Like, kudos to our clients, kudos to those who are listening, who are on their journey and are like, yeah, I needed this episode. Like, I needed to hear all of this shit because like I'm in the fire, and you can continue to go. Like, you have what it takes inside of you. All the answers are within you. Just keep going.
Yep. Look at yourself in the mirror and realize how fucking powerful you are.
You are
Like,
a
yeah, you are a
creator.
powerful creator. 100%. Oh my gosh. So many people get so like down on themselves because you're like, this is fucking hard. And it is. And I just want to let you know I'm proud of you because life's tough and shedding layers is tough and figuring out who you are is tough. But when you go through the fire and you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, I'm doing it. Like, I'm still showing up every day, not only for myself, but for my family, for my clients, for my business.
Mhm.
That's what separates you from the pack.
Mhm.
And I think like a lot of spiritual healers, at least the ones that I've experienced, have opened my heart to the softness because
Mhm.
I've always been a hard ass. And I think it's definitely, like Jess said, very good to have a balance, right? But
That's
you
what you and
cannot,
I are, I feel like
yes.
like you're the hard and I'm like I'm the softy that will also like push the hard. But
Hmm.
I feel like that's why this balance is so good. And it's so
Yes.
funny. Like, we're always on the same page, like us coming on here and saying we're talking about shedding. We're like, holy fuck, like we're on the same like
Yeah.
experience right now. But like that's what's so cool for those who get to experience this. That's like for those who are listening to this, like you get to truly see like this dual dynamic
Hmm.
of two people sharing their healing journeys in an overlap. And like you're not alone. Like you and I are experiencing the same things in different capacities, different levels, different experiences. And that is what like surrounding yourself with a community, with podcasts like this, like with hearing things that are letting you know like it's okay and you
Hmm.
got this. And like when you
Yep.
said you're proud of me and you were telling all the audience, I got chills because I was like, she's speaking to me right now. Oh my God. Like I hope everyone felt that. Like that is true. Like we are so proud of you.
Yes. and
And just keep going. You
keep
got
going.
this. Your
Yeah.
next level is ready for you. She's like, give me your hand. I'm coming.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, just to kind of like wrap this up is like, if you resonate with Jess, or you resonate with me, or you resonate with both of us, neither is right or wrong. I think it's beautiful that Jess and I are going through the same stuff. We teach the same stuff, but in all different types of ways. And I think that just shows that, like, no matter how you handle the fire, it's okay. Like, there is no right or wrong way to go through the fire at all. Like, just love yourself through it. That is the only thing I'm going to tell you to do.
Self-love is the key to everything.
Yeah. Like, you had a
100%.
bad day, just, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, it's
look
all
yourself in the
right.
mirror and like give yourself some love, give yourself some pleasure. I don't know, do whatever like feels good for you. And you're gonna get through it because you've made it this far.
Hell yeah. I mean, look, treat yourself the way that you would treat people that you love. Right.
Like 10 times better because you deserve so much.
Yes.
So much.
Yeah. Because like, I mean, look, you look at your family, your friends, your loved ones who go through the fire, right? And you're there and you hold them up and you pick them up. And because I know you do. And then you go through the fire, you need just as much, if not more, from yourself in that moment. Because if you can't pick your own self up, how are you going to pick up your kids? How are you going to pick up your husband, your wife, your partner? How are you going to pick them up? Right. So put yourself on a higher pedestal so that you can be your best self to not only show up for yourself, but for your environment and your people.
You are the leader. You are the guide. I fucking love that. That is the best way to end on this. You are the guide, my friends. Like you have this incredible ability to put yourself on the highest fucking pedestal that you have.
Yeah. Set the tone.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Wow. This was kick-ass, Liz. Yes. Fuck yes. Thank you for sharing all of the knowledge about just this process, the shedding process. I know the name of this episode. It's Shedding Old Versions of Yourself, Purge That Shit. Like that's what we're calling it. So thank you everyone for listening, being here with us, purging the shit of our old selves.
Hell yeah.
See you guys next time.
Bye.